He was kind, thoughtful, friendly.
Pathological liar.
At the time, one would have said an answer to prayer, just what we needed.
The narrative explores the themes of broken trust, eroded faith, and the devastating consequences of unrestrained authority. It highlights the betrayal of trust when individuals in positions of power, such as healthcare professionals, abuse their authority and harm those who have placed their faith in them. Harold Frederick Shipman was born on January 14, 1946, in Nottingham, England. He was the second of 3 children to Harold Frederick Shipman Sr. and Vera, a working-class family deeply rooted in their Methodist faith. Shipman's life took a dramatic turn when his mother, Vera, passed away from lung cancer in 1963. This event would later bear a haunting resemblance to the circumstances surrounding his own sinister actions.
Access to death-dealing drugs.
Always well-mannered, very polite.
Perfect predator.
The loss of his mother had a profound impact on Shipman, shaping his perspective on life and death. Shipman married Primrose May Oxtoby in 1966 and had 4 children. He graduated from the Leeds School of Medicine at the University of Leeds in 1970, embarking on a promising medical career. Top jobs at Pontefract General Infirmary and the Abraham Ormerod Medical Centre in Todmorden followed, solidifying his reputation as a trusted GP. In 1975, Shipman's facade began to crack when he was caught forging prescriptions for pethidine, a powerful opioid, for himself. He was fined £600 and spent time in a drug rehab clinic. Despite this setback, Shipman continued to build his reputation, joining the Donnybrook Medical Centre in Hyde, Greater Manchester, in 1977. Shipman's star was shining bright, but he was hiding a sinister secret. He had become a serial killer, targeting his elderly patients.
Perfect killing machine.
The police eventually caught up with him, and his crimes were exposed. A significant turning point in the inquiry into Shipman's crimes came when the authorities decided to exhume the remains of one of his victims, Kathleen, for forensic analysis. The police informed the families of 19 people who had died under Shipman's care, preparing them for the worst. As the truth began to unravel, the community was left reeling in shock and disbelief. How could a trusted doctor, sworn to protect and care for his patients, commit such heinous crimes? Harold Frederick Shipman's crimes earned him the notorious distinction of being one of the most prolific serial killers in British history. His actions shattered the trust placed in him, leaving a trail of devastation that would forever haunt the families of his victims. Shipman's era of terror finally came to an end on January 13, 2004. As a doctor, Harold Shipman had been entrusted with the most precious commodity of all, the lives of his patients. But instead of upholding that trust, he had abused it in the most heinous manner conceivable. His ego, a ravenous beast that had consumed him whole, had driven him to commit unspeakable atrocities. His patients had revered him, hanging on his every word, as if he were a deity. And in many ways, Shipman had genuinely believed himself to be omnipotent, above the law, and unaccountable to anyone. But the truth, as it often did, proved to be far more sinister. Shipman's ego had not merely driven him to kill, it had also compelled him to cover his tracks, to manipulate and deceive those around him, and to believe that he was above the law. And even when he was finally apprehended, his ego refused to relinquish its grip. Instead, he reacted with hostility and aggression, obstinately refusing to accept responsibility for his actions and blaming everyone else for his downfall. The seeds of suspicion were sown in March 1998, when Linda Reynolds, a colleague of Shipman's at the Brook Surgery in Hyde, raised concerns about the unusually high mortality rate among Shipman's patients.
found out that the police had actually investigated Shipman before in March 1998, quite soon after breaking the story. I spoke to Dr. Linda Reynolds, and she was the GP who courageously went to the local coroner, John Pollard, and told him that she was worried that Shipman had killed his patients.
She discussed her concerns with John Pollard, the coroner for the South Manchester district, and told him about the excessive number of cremation forms for elderly women that Shipman had asked her to countersign. As Reynolds's warnings began to circulate, a sense of unease settled over the community, hinting at the dark truth that was yet to come. Despite Reynolds's warnings, the police investigation that followed did not turn up enough evidence to charge Shipman. The case was closed on April 17, 1998, leaving Shipman free to continue his sinister activities. However, the Shipman inquiry later criticized Greater Manchester Police for assigning inexperienced officers to handle the investigation. Tragically, Shipman went on to take 3 more lives after the case was closed, leaving behind a trail of devastation that would forever haunt the families of his victims. In August 1998, a taxi driver named John Shaw approached the police with his own suspicions about Shipman. Shaw had been driving many of Shipman's elderly patients to the hospital, and he noticed that a disproportionate number of them were dying under Shipman's care. Shaw's concerns were later proved to be valid, and his bravery in coming forward would ultimately play a crucial role in bringing Shipman to justice. The events that unfolded in June 1998 would prove to be the catalyst for Shipman's downfall. Kathleen Grundy, a former mayor of Hyde, was found dead in her home on June 24, 1998. Shipman, who had been the last person to see her alive, signed her death certificate, stating that she had died of natural causes. However, Grundy's daughter, Angela Woodruff, a solicitor, began to suspect foul play when she discovered that her mother had apparently left a will that excluded Woodruff and her children, leaving a substantial sum of £386,000 to Shipman instead. As the police investigation into Grundy's death gathered momentum, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. Shipman's methods were meticulous and calculating, designed to avoid detection at all costs. He had typically administered a fatal dose of morphine to his victims, mostly elderly individuals, and then returned to his surgery to falsify their medical records, exaggerating their health problems to cover his tracks. The breakthrough in the case came on September 7, 1998, when Shipman was finally arrested. A vital piece of evidence was uncovered: a Brother typewriter identical to the one used to forge the will of Kathleen Grundy. This discovery was the key to unlocking the full extent of Shipman's crimes, and it would ultimately lead to his conviction. The autumn of 1998 was a watershed moment in the history of British crime. It was then that Harold Shipman, a man notorious for his lethal tendencies, finally faced justice. He was convicted of 15 counts of murder, but this was only a fraction of his heinous acts. The subsequent Shipman inquiry uncovered a shocking total of 284 victims over a period of 30 years. What distinguished the Shipman case was the unsettling lack of a clear pattern. There was no visible trail of victims, and no frenzied killer was at large. At least, not until the authorities apprehended him in connection with the Kathleen Grundy incident. It appeared as though Shipman had conducted his sinister operations in obscurity, his nefarious deeds concealed in plain sight. Behind the facade of a respected doctor, Harold Frederick Shipman, known to friends as Fred or Freddie, harbored a dark secret. Born on June 14, 1946, in Nottingham, Shipman's early years were marked by a profound sense of alienation. As the investigation into his crimes unfolded, a complex web of deceit began to unravel, revealing a calculated and meticulous approach to his sinister activities. The police discovered that Shipman had kept a ledger of death certificates and had falsified the medical records of his victims to cover his tracks. A list of 15 deaths requiring further investigation was compiled, and the decision was made to exhume 9 bodies. However, as the authorities delved deeper, they made a shocking discovery. Shipman had often persuaded the families of his victims to opt for cremation, which would have destroyed any evidence of his wrongdoing. The inquiry into Shipman's crimes revealed a troubling pattern. His approach was both meticulous and calculated, administering fatal doses of diamorphine, completing death certificates, and altering medical records to cover his tracks. The authorities examined 15 specific cases, and the evidence all pointed to one chilling conclusion. Shipman was a serial killer. In retrospect, the warning signs had been evident. A 2003 study indicated that statistical monitoring could have raised concerns as early as 1996. The data revealed a concerning increase in excess deaths among female patients aged over 65, with a disproportionate number of these fatalities occurring during Shipman's afternoon visits. The trial of Harold Shipman began on October 5, 1999. Shipman, a once respected doctor with a dark secret, faced allegations of murdering 15 women between 1995 and 1998. The prosecution presented a compelling case, showing Shipman to be a calculated and merciless killer who had betrayed the trust of his patients. As the trial progressed, the true extent of Shipman's crimes became increasingly clear, leaving the community in shock and disbelief. On January 31, 2000, the jury delivered their verdict after 6 days of deliberation. Harold Shipman was found guilty of 15 counts of murder and 1 count of forgery. The sentence was swift and severe, life imprisonment for each of the 15 murder convictions, with a recommendation for a whole life tariff. The forgery charge added another 4 years to his sentence, sealing Shipman's fate as one of the most notorious serial killers in British history. As the dust settled on Shipman's conviction, attention turned to his past, seeking clues that might explain the motivations behind his heinous crimes. Shipman's childhood was marked by a notable detachment from his peers, a characteristic that persisted throughout his life. His mother, Vera, harbored lofty aspirations for him and meticulously controlled his social interactions, dictating whom he could associate with and when. Vera's influence significantly shaped Shipman's early development, instilling in him a sense of superiority that would ultimately lead to his downfall. The dynamics of their relationship were complex, with Vera's expectations and control exerting a profound impact on Shipman's psyche. As he navigated the challenges of adolescence, Shipman's sense of detachment and superiority grew, laying the groundwork for the sinister events that would unfold in the years to come. The death of Shipman's mother, Vera, on June 21, 1960, had a profound impact on his life. In the weeks preceding Vera's death, the family doctor had frequently visited the Shipman residence, administering morphine to alleviate her suffering. The morning following Vera's death, Shipman must have felt as though his world was collapsing. The loss of his mother, combined with the exposure to morphine, would later prove to be a pivotal moment in Shipman's life, shaping his future actions in ways both subtle and profound. Despite the inner turmoil he faced, Shipman aspired to pursue a career in medicine at Leeds Medical School. However, destiny had a different course in store for him. He did not achieve the necessary grades, a disappointment that would ultimately redirect his life. Unbeknownst to him, this unexpected turn would eventually lead him down a dark and malevolent path, earning him the infamous title of Dr. Death. As Shipman's life began to take shape, the seeds of his future crimes were sown, waiting to germinate into the horrific reality that would soon unfold. The year 1965 marked a significant turning point for Fred Shipman, as he was accepted into Leeds Medical School after retaking his exams. This raised questions about what had motivated Shipman to pursue a medical career. Was it a sincere desire to save lives, or had he had a more sinister intention? As Shipman embarked on his medical journey, a sense of unease began to simmer just below the surface. Shipman's medical career began at Pontefract General Infirmary, where he worked as a junior doctor. Within a year, he had obtained his medical license, and his future seemed bright. However, it was at this institution that his first documented murder had occurred, casting a dark shadow over his promising career. By 1974, Shipman had established himself as a respected member of the community in Todmorden, Yorkshire, but the seeds of deceit had already been sown. To his patients and colleagues, Shipman appeared to be a devoted and empathetic physician, but those who had worked alongside him had recognized a contrasting aspect of his character. The illusion of the ideal village doctor had begun to disintegrate when Shipman's struggle with drug addiction had been revealed. He had been compelled to leave his practice and enter a rehabilitation facility in York, raising questions about his fitness to practice medicine. Despite his troubled history, Shipman was permitted to practice at the Donnybrook Medical Centre in Hyde in 1977. It was here that he continued his lethal activities, concealing his true nature behind a facade of charm and dedication. The full scope of Shipman's malevolence may never have been entirely uncovered, but a detailed investigation into the fatalities that had occurred under his care had unveiled alarming trends. The mortality rate among elderly patients had been disproportionately elevated, with Shipman frequently present at these deaths, raising suspicions that would eventually lead to his downfall. As the consequences of Shipman's actions continued to unfold, the medical community and the nation at large struggled to come to terms with the sheer scale of his betrayal. On February 11, 2000, the General Medical Council removed him from the medical register, a move that marked the end of his medical career and the beginning of his journey into the shadows. 2 years later, Home Secretary David Blunkett confirmed the whole life tariff, ensuring that Shipman would spend the rest of his life behind bars. Despite being faced with a mountain of evidence, Shipman maintained his innocence, disputing the scientific findings and sticking to his guns. His wife, Primrose, stood by him, convinced he was innocent, even after the court handed down its guilty verdict. The trial of Harold Shipman was a watershed moment in the history of British medicine. He became the first doctor to be found guilty of murdering his patients, a fact that sent shockwaves through the medical community. The case had some eerie similarities to that of John Bodkin Adams, a doctor who was accused of killing a patient back in 1957. Although Adams was acquitted, his legacy lived on, shaping the circumstances surrounding the Shipman case. Historian Pamela Cullen made an insightful comment, saying that Adams' acquittal made everyone too comfortable, stopping anyone from examining the flaws in the British legal system until the Shipman case came along and exposed them. As the years passed, Shipman's dark tale continued to unfold, a reminder of the devastating consequences of his actions. January 13, 2004, was the day Shipman's story finally came to a close. The serial killer, just a day shy of his 58th birthday, took his own life in his cell at HM Prison Wakefield. The news sent shockwaves across the nation, leaving everyone to ponder the implications of his sudden demise. The year 2000 marked a significant turning point in the case of Harold Shipman. On Monday, January 31, 2000, the jury at Preston Crown Court delivered a verdict that profoundly impacted the medical community. Harold Shipman was found guilty of murdering 15 of his patients and falsifying the will of Angela Woodruff's cherished mother, Kathleen Grundy.
When Kathleen Grundy died, she left a will. That will was made out in favour of Dr. Shipman, but her daughter, Angela Woodruff, got this copy of a will And she was absolutely astonished because if you look at the actual will, it's so amateur. If you've got to forge a will.
As the dust settled on Shipman's conviction, attention turned to the events that had led to his downfall. 2 significant errors had ultimately sealed his fate. Firstly, his administration of morphine, a substance that can persist in bodily tissues for extended periods, had left a clear trail of incriminating evidence. Secondly, the typewriter used to forge Kathleen Grundy's will was a rudimentary device.
Kathleen Grundy's daughter believed that the signature was not actually her mother's, so consequently the document needed to be examined.
Lacking the sophistication typically associated with acts of forgery. As the investigation into Shipman's crimes continued, a deeper understanding of his motivations began to emerge. Some theorized that he had harbored a profound animosity towards elderly women, perceiving them as a burden on the healthcare system. Others suggested that he had been attempting to replicate the death scene of his own mother, driven by a sadistic desire for control. Despite the substantial evidence against him, Harold Shipman had consistently asserted his innocence, concealing the true motivations behind his actions even while incarcerated. For the families of his victims, Shipman's eventual suicide represented a final, heartbreaking betrayal. They were denied the chance to hear Shipman own up to his horrific crimes or understand what drove him to commit them. The news of Shipman's death on January 13, 2004, sent shockwaves across the nation. The families of his victims felt gutted, and the national press was filled with a mix of emotions. The Daily Mirror labeled Shipman a cold coward, while The Sun ran a cheeky front-page headline, "Ship Ship Hooray." The Independent took a more measured approach, calling for a proper investigation into the state of UK prisons and the treatment of inmates. As the nation struggled to come to terms with the implications of Shipman's death, one thing was clear: the legacy of his crimes would continue to haunt the families of his victims for years to come. The reasons behind Shipman's shocking decision to end his life remained a mystery, leaving many to speculate about his motivations. Reports indicated that he told his probation officer he was thinking of taking his own life to ensure his wife's financial security after his National Health Service pension was revoked. This revelation added another layer of complexity to Shipman's already perplexing character. In the aftermath of Shipman's death, an atmosphere of discomfort and tension prevailed. His remains were kept in Sheffield for more than a year, during which his widow was cautioned against proceeding with a burial due to fears of potential vandalism. The nation was still reeling from the shock of Shipman's crimes, and the uncertainty surrounding his death only added to the sense of unease. As the investigation into Shipman's crimes continued, a disturbing pattern emerged. Most of his victims were elderly women in good health who had unwittingly placed their trust in a monster. The full extent of Shipman's atrocities may never be fully known, as numerous suspicious deaths could not be definitively attributed to him. The Shipman inquiry, led by Judge Janet Smith, provided a comprehensive examination of Shipman's crimes. In July 2002, the inquiry revealed a shocking finding.
The control of dangerous drugs, in particular dimorphine, which Shipman invariably used as his method of killing, I found there was quite good control at the wholesale distribution stage and also at the retail pharmacy stage.
Shipman had murdered at least 218 of his patients between 1975 and 1998. This staggering number sent shockwaves across the nation, and the inquiry's findings sparked a wider debate about the safety of patients in the NHS. In January 2005, Judge Janet Smith released her sixth and final report, which provided new insights into Shipman's early professional life. It suggested that his killing spree may have commenced much earlier than previously believed, with 3 suspected murders and 4 additional deaths raising significant concerns. As the full extent of Shipman's horrific crimes began to emerge, the General Medical Council, GMC, took swift action, charging 6 doctors who had signed off on cremation forms for Shipman's victims with professional misconduct. As the repercussions of Shipman's crimes continued to emerge, attention turned to the medical professionals who had worked alongside him. In October 2005, an inquiry was held against 2 doctors who had worked with Shipman at Tameside General Hospital in 1994. These doctors had failed to notice that Shipman had deliberately administered a fatal dose of morphine to one of his patients. The Shipman inquiry subsequently recommended major changes to the GMC's framework to prevent such egregious mistakes from happening again. The inquiry's findings highlighted the need for greater vigilance and accountability within the medical profession, and its recommendations paved the way for a safer, more transparent healthcare system. In 2005, a shocking new revelation came to light. Shipman was suspected of having stolen jewelry from his victims. The police had seized a staggering £10,000 worth of jewelry from Shipman's garage in 1998. When Primrose requested its return in March 2005, the police contacted the families of Shipman's victims to help identify the stolen items. This investigation ultimately led to the recovery of 66 pieces of jewelry, which were returned to Primrose. An additional 33 pieces were auctioned off, with the proceeds going to Tameside Victim Support. In a poignant moment, a platinum diamond ring was returned to the family of one of Shipman's murdered patients after they provided photographic evidence of ownership. As the families of Shipman's victims continued to seek closure, a moving memorial was unveiled on July 30, 2005, in honor of those who fell victim to Shipman's horrific crimes. The Garden of Tranquility, located in Hyde Park, Hyde, was a peaceful sanctuary, commemorating the lives of those who were taken too soon. The memorial served as a poignant reminder of the devastating impact of Shipman's crimes and the importance of remembering and honoring the victims. As the years passed, the families of Shipman's victims continued to fight for justice and compensation for their losses. By early 2009, over 200 families were still navigating the complex and often soul-destroying process of pursuing damages. The journey towards closure was a long and difficult one, but the families remained steadfast in their quest for accountability. The aftermath of the Shipman case saw significant changes in the medical profession. One of the most notable changes was the shift from single doctor general practices to multiple doctor general practices. This change was driven by the need for greater safeguarding and monitoring of doctors' decisions, ensuring that the mistakes of the past would not be repeated. The Shipman case also led to a major overhaul of cremation regulations in England and Wales. The forms required for cremation were revised to include more probing questions designed to prevent similar cases of foul play from slipping through the cracks. These changes served as a testament to the lasting impact of Shipman's crimes and the community's unwavering commitment to honoring the memories of his victims. In September 2009, a controversy erupted when it was announced that letters written by Shipman while he was in prison were going up for auction. The victims' families and the media were outraged, and the response was immediate and forceful. The auctioneer was forced to cancel the sale, a decision that reflected the enduring sensitivity and outrage surrounding Shipman's crimes. Today, Harold Shipman remains the only British doctor to have been convicted of murdering patients. His case serves as a solemn reminder of the importance of accountability in the medical profession. While other doctors and medical professionals have faced similar allegations, Shipman's case continues to stand as a stark warning of the devastating consequences of medical malpractice. The tragic event had a lasting impact on the victims' families, eroding their trust and sense of safety. However, it also revealed the resilience of the human spirit, the capacity for forgiveness, and the importance of accountability and vigilance. The tragedy served as a reminder to hold those in power accountable and to protect the sacred trust of healing. Thank you for watching. If you found this video informative, please consider subscribing for more content. Share with your friends and family to help spread the word. Your support means the world to us.